Welcome to Good for Bitcoin, a weekly show recorded live every Friday where we recap the top events of the week and talk about everything that is good for Bitcoin. If it's built on Bitcoin, then it's good for Bitcoin. Let's get started.
Content shared on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and do not reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, or company. We encourage you to conduct your own research and consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions.
Well, hello, everybody. Happy Friday and welcome to Good for Bitcoin, your weekly pulse on Bitcoin innovation. We've got a lot to talk about this week. We're going to get into all the BIP 110 drama that has been unfolding. But first, we got to check in with Kate. Kate, how was your week?
Hey, Brennan. Yeah, I had a good week. It's been a fun week to work in Bitcoin, I think.
Yes.
Obviously some fun things happening with stacks, but yeah, seeing Saylor selling Bitcoin, weighing in on the BIP drama. It's been fun. So
yeah,
we have some cool stories to get into this week that very interesting, kind of like shaping the whole landscape of where Bitcoin's going, which is awesome.
Yeah, you said it well. It's been nice. We've had a lot of good news to cover over the past 2 weeks after a bit of a dry spell, I guess, through most of June. So let's get into some of the public company news. You already mentioned it, but yeah, Strategy has sold 3,588 BTC this week. This funds an additional $216 million worth of dividends for STRC and their other yield instruments. But that amount represents only 0.4% of their entire BTC supply. So a very, very, very small drop in the bucket for them. They basically said that this dividend obligations on their preferred stack now structurally require selling BTC. So that never sell era has ended, I guess. Never said that we wouldn't sell, just that you shouldn't sell, as Saylor said. And this confirms that it's now maybe going to be a structural thing, and they're gonna maybe start regular sells of Bitcoin every week until the price starts to go up. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Then we have Strive. They bought 18 Bitcoin and they now hold 19,882 BTC in total.
Strive trying to catch up to Strategy as Strategy sells.
So close.
OranjeBTC bought 5 BTC this week. They now hold 3,904 Bitcoin.
Then we have Empery Digital. They sold 1,400 BTC, which is a pretty sizable amount for them because they now hold 1,514.
Yeah, nearly half of their stack. That's a lot. Some updates from some quarterly filings because we are in quarter 2 ending season. American Bitcoin Corp, which is the Trump family company, revealed that they now have 8,000 Bitcoin, which is 500 more than their last update.
Right. Good for them. And then we have Boyaa Interactive International Limited of Japan. They added an additional 108 BTC to their balance sheet, which brings them to 4,201.
Cool. That is all. Yeah, all the public companies that I saw this week moving Bitcoin around. So let's get into some news. We got a lot of good stories. So the first one is from StackingDAO. They announced stBTC, which is a liquid staked version of Bitcoin that's built for the upcoming Bitcoin staking launch on stacks. stBTC will basically let Bitcoin holders earn a yield through staking while keeping their capital liquid and ready to move across the rest of the stacks ecosystem. So very similar to their other liquid stacking products, but this one is now powered by Bitcoin staking. The underlying BTC is basically paired with with STX backing from STSTX and STSTX-BTC. Basically, what this does is it enables BTC holders to earn BTC yield without having STX exposure, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
So this basically allows you to participate in Bitcoin staking without having to just bother with or deal with holding STX. Like it's just like kind of handled for you, which is really, really neat. Makes it maybe a little easier for certain institutions or certain folks to participate in Bitcoin staking.
Yeah, I think this is really cool. Like, again, you can just plug stBTC into DeFi that exists on Stacks, whether that's through Bitflow, Zest, and yeah, just keep that Bitcoin earning. I mean, StackingDAO is like a pretty renowned team in the Stacks ecosystem. They've been building the stacking infra for over 2 years. I think at their peak, they had over 150 million STX stacked. I could be wrong on that number. Over 40,000 stakers, yeah, and no security incidents that I've heard of. So it was a pretty cool launch. Really good way they like laid out the product and everything, and I think just they're doing a good job at comparing it to ETH and Solana, and how, like, you know, over on those ecosystems they built these whole like financial ecosystems on top of staking, and they're showing like how they're going to be able to do that with Bitcoin and Stacks. So I think that they have some good comparisons, and yeah, I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, I do like how this isn't related to StackingDAO, but just in general, that the Bitcoin staking product is sometimes being like referred to as like a Bitcoin bond.
Yeah.
I think like calling it a bond, like bonds are generally viewed as like very safe, which like Bitcoin staking is, because you're still like, you know, retaining custody of your Bitcoin on the L1.
Yep.
And you know, like marginal, like, you know, not crazy yields, right? You're not going to get like 20-30% yield on it. Right now, through the StackingDAO announcement, they said that base yield is expected to be around 2.6%. But that's 2.6%. That is kind of just like free Bitcoin on top of your Bitcoin, just for participating in the program. So
yeah, pretty
cool. STBTC is expected to launch just before the Bitcoin staking release, which is Q3, which we are in right now. So countdown is on.
Yeah, cool to see.
Okay, moving on. This story is pretty crazy. Curious of your thoughts on it. So Bonk DAO, which Bonk is like a Solana coin, the DAO lost $20 million of their own token. But the question is, was it an exploit, or was it just governance working as intended? So there's a few really good threads on the subject. There's one from Look On Chain, one from Chainalysis. Basically, the recap is this unknown person, they spent $4.4 million to steal $21.2 million from the Bonk treasury, making a net profit of $16.8 million. The attack basically began on June 30th when an anonymous wallet proposed draining the Bonk's treasury. So they used, like, you know, the governance tools that are out there, right? They made this governance proposal. And then to pass, the proposal needed 1% of Bonk's supply voting yes. So essentially just made this kind of like a bit of like a Sybil attack. You just needed to have 1% of Bonk's supply to potentially push this through. And on July 4th and 5th, a different wallet acquired that amount. So that was $8 million that was bought on mainstream exchanges and also borrowed via DeFi and then pooled together to construct the over 1% supply needed. By July 6th, the malicious voter had just enough Bonk. It voted pass, which triggered the $20 million treasuries draining into an exploiter wallet. And then 9 hours later, that wallet transferred $188,000 to a mainstream exchange, likely for cash out, sent the remaining $19 million to a multi-sig wallet where the funds still sit. But here's the thing, which is crazy, is that nobody really voted no. There was like a couple, I was looking at the address or the governance site, and like a few people did vote no, but it doesn't seem like anybody on the Bonk team was even looking at these governance proposals. So yeah, I mean, nobody voted no. Everyone voted yes. And that's, I guess the question is like, was this actually an illegal thing, or was it the system working exactly as designed? That is the question.
What's crazy to me is that it only needed 1% of the supply to vote yes in order for this to pass. That seems like an incredibly low threshold and like,
yeah,
a very poor design.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, if I would have known that, I would have raised a flag or something. I don't know. Like, hey, this is maybe not a good idea to
anyway,
to allow this.
It sounds like they're coordinating with like exchanges and even like the foundation, trying to like get some of the funds back, or like coordinating with law enforcement. But at the same time, it's like, hey, we messed up on our own end. Can you help us? It's not really a legitimate ask, you know, if the code worked as intended.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I feel like it would result in being like deemed illegal or deemed like stealing funds by like a court of law, because it wasn't the intent, right, to allow this to happen, and that's probably how it would end up getting ruled eventually. But yeah, certainly calls into question. I mean, I think these types of governance proposals are great, but if you design it to only need 1% of the supply to allow something like this to go through, then that's a very, very flawed design.
Like malpractice. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Someone's going to jail.
Inside job. Who knows? Nobody voted no.
All right, let's get into the next one. Take it back to the era of choke point 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
Headline for this one is Kraken will be awarded a $22 million reward with the Delaware Court of Chancery for damage related to Operation Choke Point 2.0. So, to give some context here, Kraken had hired an accounting firm called Mazars as an auditor to like go through their books and make sure everything they were doing was clean. And for 3 years they were doing this audit. It came back with clean results. There was no findings of mismanagement, nothing of fraud. And then in December of 2023, literally days before finishing the year-end audit, the accounting firm Mazars just quit. And again, they said that there was no problems with the books. There was no like integrity concerns. They didn't find any fraud. They just walked away. And obviously this is like a huge problem for a company who relies on these audits to publish and be very transparent about how they're working. They also need them for banking and investors and licenses, all of this kind of stuff. So they took Mazars to arbitration for a breach of contract, and they're going to end up winning a $22 million reward a couple years later. And basically they're going to make, they're asking the Delaware Court of Chancery to make this an enforceable judgment. So why they're doing this and kind of like why Mazars quit, even though it was like a very clean kind of job, there was nothing nefarious going on, and it was a paying client. Kraken is saying it was from government pressure. So back in 2023, there was a lot of bank regulators, the feds, the FDIC, the OCC. They were basically warning the financial industry that they shouldn't be working with any types of crypto clients for safety, a bunch of different types of reasons. And then Kraken ended up having FOIA documents prove this. So the FDIC did actually end up sending at least 25 letters privately telling banks to either pause operations or just avoid working with any types of crypto businesses. And that's obviously what we're calling Operation Choke Point 2.0. We've talked about this a lot on the show, and how it had some pretty devastating effects for a lot of companies within the crypto industry. And so a lot of companies got debanked, they got dropped. A lot of them just took the loss. There was probably no real legal path for them at the time, but Kraken stood up and is fighting it, and they're getting paid for it. And so they're probably going to set a precedent for a lot of companies that went through a lot of similar things where they were just dropped voluntarily or out of the blue. And we'll see if other crypto companies will kind of follow suit with Kraken and maybe get some reimbursement or some justice.
Yeah, that would certainly be nice. I personally have worked at companies that have been impacted by Choke Point 2.0 directly, lost their banking relationships in the Saks ecosystem. I remember even Manib actually posted about I think it was Bank of America, his personal accounts were just shut off for no reason during this time, and I think he was able to get them back, partially because he is a public figure and posted about it publicly. And I'm sure that there's plenty of people that, maybe were not in Manib's position and probably, lost and didn't really have any recourse.
Yeah.
So it's very real. And we're certainly starting to see the aftermath of that, I guess. But good for Kraken to get this money.
Yeah.
I'm sure 22 million. It certainly sounds like a big number, but I'm sure that they were impacted even more than that number, represents. So, but good for them.
Good for them. I can take the next one too if you want. I was kind of digging into this. So it's funny, anytime, how to describe it, but basically anytime anyone announces Bitcoin yield, Bitcoin staking, I'm immediately we need to dig into this a little bit more. Sounds good, but what's actually happening under the hood? So for this one, Binance made an announcement. They're launching a Bitcoin yield product. So they're getting into the Bitcoin yield race, and Yeah, again, for me, anytime I hear this, I just think, well, like, okay, where is the yield coming from and what is the mechanics that are happening underneath the hood that allow you to earn yield on your Bitcoin? So from my understanding how this works, I'll try and keep it pretty simple because there is some some financial engineering going on here, but basically you would deposit your Bitcoin into Binance Earn. It transfers into, I think it's called BTCY, and that's sort of like their Bitcoinized version of your Bitcoin. They then sell call options against it, and then the option premiums are your yield. So then you would get paid weekly in Bitcoin to your spot account. Right now, the strategy is holding around 92 Bitcoin, and so the advertised APR is sitting around 0.41%, not super high.
Yeah, that's pretty low.
Yeah, then I think what's worse is if you look at the fees that Binance is going to charge you on it. So basically they'll take a 15% cut of the option premiums off the top. So anything that they make, they're taking 15% of that. And then if you want to take your Bitcoin out, then you're also getting charged fees on that. So from my perspective, like what this means is like, if you think the price of Bitcoin is going to stay as is for a long time, you could make some money on this. But if Bitcoin's price goes up, you're kind of losing out because it's a call option. So like you basically have to pay, the agreement price set with Binance. And so if Bitcoin's price goes up, they're kind of like seeing the benefit of that.
And they're shaving off 15% off the top of that.
Yeah.
The price appreciates. So
yeah, exactly. So I mean, for them, it's an amazing business move. Like they're taking all of this idle Bitcoin, and they're going to be earning a ton of fees on it. So it's a great move for them as a business. But I don't know. Personally, for me, like I don't know if this would be worth it. I mean, everyone has to do like their own diligence and stuff, but I'm not sure how amazing this is on the user end. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's better than 0%.
For sure. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, but it also, like, if you have a lot of Bitcoin, you shouldn't be holding it on any exchange. So, I don't know. Yeah, there's certainly, I mean, we obviously are a little bit biased towards the Stacks ecosystem, but
yeah,
there's certainly more self-custodial options that are out there that are paying higher. Like, it's better in almost every way. Your Bitcoin is safer and you're earning more and you're paying less fees, right? So yeah, I don't know if I would use this.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's a customer for everything, so I'm sure this will work for some people. But I guess like if anything, it's great marketing for like this whole Bitcoin yield, Bitcoin staking, all of this kind of new financial products coming out around Bitcoin. Because I mean, from my end, it's like these companies advertise it, and then you can position stacks against it. Obviously, is like the whole self-custody pitch, and the 3% looks nicer compared to a 0.41%.
Certainly.
Especially when you can claim full self-custody. But yeah, anyway, it's making a lot of noise. Again, it sounds like really cool, and then you dig under the hood and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, it is kind of funny that we're starting to see so many of these like Bitcoin yield products coming out. It's kind of feeling like Bitcoin yield is like the 2026 version of like just Bitcoin layers, of 2023 or whatever.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, it is like you said, it's validation.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense with all these like Bitcoin treasury companies and public companies holding Bitcoin. Like that is sort of the next step, is to, especially with people like being forced to sell their Bitcoin to pay dividends, if that's their pitch. Like this is obviously a great, Bitcoin yield on top of your Bitcoin is a great selling feature. So I think that's where a lot of this new meta comes from.
Well, it's maybe a good segue to our next topic. Speaking of like being a forced seller. So I thought this was super interesting. This announcement this week, Strike is unveiling volatility-proof loans, is what they're calling it. And we've criticized Strike's loans product in the past, but this looks genuinely interesting. So volatility-proofed loans are Bitcoin-backed loans that they say eliminate all price-triggered loan-to-value actions throughout a loan's term. So if you have a loan through this product, no matter how far Bitcoin's price drops, your collateral will stay untouched as long as you continue your payments and your payments are current. If your loan ends, so the loans I think are a fixed term, they're 6 months. So if that 6-month period ends, there's a 10-day grace period. And if that 10-day grace period passes after a missed interest or maturity payment, collateral can be still used to either fully or partially liquidate and cover the due amount. I guess the max LTV for these is 45%. Like I said, they have a fixed term of 6 months, and they'll charge an additional 3% APR on top of their around 10% APR that they charge for loans. So pretty high amount, like 13 or so percent APR, but could be good especially if you think that 6 months from now, like Bitcoin's price will be higher. If you think maybe 6 months from now, if Bitcoin's price is going to appreciate by 13%, that might be free Bitcoin if you arbitrage in that way. That's kind of, I think, how you have to think about it. So you still would owe the full loan amount in cash at maturity. So you're still having to pay the principal and the interest after that 6 month period. After 6 months, you can either pay that and Strike will return your Bitcoin to you, or they will liquidate what is needed to pay it off. But yeah, super interesting. It does sound like there's, I think, a little bit more risk that Strike is taking on by offering this. If Bitcoin were to go down a lot, say if Bitcoin had one of its famous, 50% in one day drawdowns that has had multiple times in its history, and it just happened to coincide with your loan ending, Strike could themselves become a forced liquidator while the loan is underwater, and they could lose some money on that. So I'm not sure the exact fine print. I'm sure that there's maybe something in there that protects them from from becoming having this loss kind of that they're taking on themselves. But yeah, super interesting. Volatility proof loans is not a concept that I have heard many people talk about.
No, not at all. It's got to be the first. Pretty cool.
Okay, main story of the week. We got to talk about BIP 110. There's been just a lot of mudslinging on both sides with BIP 110. I'm sure you've all seen it on the timeline. Anybody that's listening has probably seen a lot of posts about it. I really wanted to dig into the facts because it is a BIP. You can go on the Bitcoin wiki and you can actually read it. So I wanted to take a couple things straight from the BIP, and I actually learned some things by reading through the BIP about it because there is so much mudslinging on both sides. There's not a lot of focus on the facts. So first is the intro that's taken straight from the BIP. So this is the abstract that's at the top. So temporarily limit the size of data fields at the consensus level in order to correct distorted incentives that are caused by standardizing support for arbitrary data and to refocus priorities on improving Bitcoin as money. And I'm sure you probably agree with this too, but like my thought is, like, on the surface, like I think it's a valid desire to protect Bitcoin's use as money.
Yep.
But the implementation, I think, of this is just flawed on so many levels. The primary way that they want to limit this is by filtering certain elements from transactions, namely data within witness data, which is primarily how ordinals are constructed, and limits on tap script and a few others as well. As we've talked about, like, I think a number of times on the show, we've had Charlie Spears on the show also to really dive deeply into this on Luke's opinions on spam on the blockchain. These filters just don't work because there's always ways to bypass them. Bitcoin ordinals came about, but you could still prune them from your nodes, right? A lot of people figured that out pretty quickly. And then Bitcoin stamps were created as a way of storing arbitrary data on chain by splitting them up into multiple pieces on multiple UTXOs and making them unprunable. So there's always just like these ways around, having this arbitrary data on chain. But to their credit, they actually discuss this directly in the BIP. And they say, there's this quote that says, requiring users to divide their files into chunks of at most 256 bytes, raising the cost both in fees and in effort, sends a clear message that data storage abuses in general are unwelcome rather than sanctioned or supported. So they are basically acknowledging, like, hey, yeah, this isn't going to be like 100% successful in removing data from the blockchain, but it's maybe just gonna maybe lessen it a little bit, I guess, and at least send a message that we don't want this type of stuff on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's not terribly hard to create like a Bitcoin stamp compared to like creating an ordinal. I feel like it's just not going to work. And it seems like it's pretty wide consensus at this point that this BIP is not going to go through. Yeah. It's going to fail and is going to result in a fork, just like Bitcoin Cash or BSV. So that's my thoughts on that. But I'm curious what you think about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty with you on that. I think, like, to sum it up, I feel like the whole value of Bitcoin is that nobody gets to decide which transactions are deemed acceptable or legitimate. And I understand where it comes from, but I don't know, it's censorship resistant money. And I just don't think that that's for a small group to decide what that means. I don't know. I align with Saylor on this, so like we could talk about what he says.
Yeah, Michael Saylor had this really great tweet this week that I think recaps it all very well. I'm just going to read it verbatim because it's really good. He said, After a decade of block space fears and non-monetary use panics, Bitcoin still has no spam problem. Fees are 1 sat per VByte. Anyone can move any amount globally with immediate processing for 30 cents. The free market has always solved Bitcoin's block space challenges. And that's what it kind of boils down to. Like, the fees naturally filter out spam because you don't want to create spam if you have to pay for it. And if people want JPEGs on Bitcoin and they're willing to pay for it, they should just be allowed to do that. And, the fees are certainly low right now during like the peak of Bitcoin ordinals and runes, especially, when fees were, I think, upwards of like 400, 500 sats per VByte for a little bit. Certainly it was harder, I guess, to do a standard Bitcoin transaction during that time, but it all kind of leveled out, after a little while. And that's just how it is. I think, the fees are going to naturally kind of do their thing. And this is why Bitcoin layers are so important, right? You can use Bitcoin layers. You can transact on Bitcoin layers. Proper Bitcoin layers that settle back to Bitcoin and are provably inheriting Bitcoin security. Super important. But yeah, I think that's the solution, is to use Bitcoin layers, use stacks, use Lightning, and fees are certainly much cheaper that way.
Yeah, kudos to that. And I think it's cool that he weighs in on this. I mean, as someone who like owns, is it 3% of the supply of Bitcoin? It's good that he's like at least involved on the protocol level and, has an opinion on it.
Yeah, certainly. I feel, I don't know if it's like a change of direction, but he certainly hasn't been very vocal on this type of stuff, I think, in the past.
Not at all.
Yeah. So for Saylor to, there was the comments on Saylor's post were kind of funny, especially like coming from a lot of the ordinals folks, because they were like, like, it's weird to be like on your side, but yeah. I agree with you 100%.
Am I a Michael Saylor maxi?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Saylor being the most sensible person in the room is kind of interesting. But anyway, some quick headlines just to round out the week. I saw this, which was a little weird. Tennessee has officially banned Bitcoin ATMs in the state. They say it's an attempt to protect people from scams and fraud. I guess there's this ongoing court case that is kind of battling this out, but a judge has approved a ban in the meantime while this is going on. So if you're in Tennessee, I mean, there's certainly much better places to buy Bitcoin than a Bitcoin ATM. Those things kind of themselves are scams.
Yeah,
because they charge crazy fees.
It's so insane.
Yeah, but capitalism, I guess.
Yeah, then we have Polymarket. They're now supporting instant Bitcoin deposits over Lightning, and this is going to be powered by Spark. That's pretty cool.
That is good for Bitcoin. Pretty cool
That's
stuff.
Great for Bitcoin.
Circle is now a federally chartered bank. Circle has received final U.S. approval from the OCC to launch its own national trust bank, operating as Circle National Trust. Give institutions a federally regulated on-ramp to move serious money onto blockchain rails, so just easier, I guess, to get onto Circle. And their stock jumped 10% on the news this morning, so that's pretty big.
Yeah, pretty cool. And then to end it, we'll take it back to the Stacks ecosystem, but SIP 44 and 45 votes are going live later today on Ballot GG. So yeah, if you're in the Stacks eco, make sure you go vote yes.
I think it's live now. I think while the show has been going on, It is now live.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, these are the SIPs around Bitcoin staking and Clarity 6. So if these go through, then all of these things that we've been talking about will come to fruition. So it's likely going to happen, but you never know. But I think that there's a lot of support for these changes to take place for sure.
I think it's pretty safe for us to recommend a yes
Yeah,
on these.
for sure. For sure.
Yeah, go vote yes. I think you can find the links on the stacks. I don't know if you can get it directly from Ballot.gg, but you'll find them on socials. Yeah, go vote. Okay. I think that's everything for the week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you're tuning in live, thank you. We will see you next week. You can catch all of our episodes on goodforbitcoin.com, where we stream live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And have a good weekend, everybody.
See you guys.